Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion. Today's poetry discussion comes to us from Charles Bukowski, old Chuck Buck himself, and we will have an appearance from another Chuck along the way. But the poem in question today is X-Pug, and this poetry discussion will appear in two different playlists here on the channel. Number one, obviously, the playlist, the Poetry Discussions playlist, but also the Bukowski playlist, a playlist of poems just from Charles Bukowski. So this is the poem as it reads. If you want to help me out with what I'm doing here on the channel, hitting the like button tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel. Poetry every Monday, at least Mondays, but also novel read-alongs. I should be back with the third video for No Longer Human tomorrow. So I talk about literature exclusively on this channel. So consider hitting the subscribe button if that's something you might find yourself interested in which you might find yourself interested. X-Pug reads as such. He hooked to the body hard, took it well, and loved to fight. Had 7 in a row on a small fleck, and a small fleck over one eye. And then he met a kid from Camden with arms thin as wires. It was a good one. The safe lions roared and threw money. They were both up and down many times. But he lost that one, and he lost the rematch, in which neither of them fought at all, hanging on to each other like lovers through the booze. And now he's over at Mike's, changing tires and oil and batteries. The fleck over the eye, still young. But you don't ask him. You don't ask him anything except maybe you think it's going to rain or you think the sun's going to come out, to which he'll usually answer, hell no. But you'll have your important tank of gas and drive off. Now, I want to compare this poem here, these few words that we got from Chuck Buck, with a quote from the Bible. And by the Bible, I mean Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. On page 48 into 49 of Fight Club, about the Fight Club itself, we get this quote. Maybe at lunch, the waiter comes to your table and the waiter has 2 black eyes of a giant panda from Fight Club last weekend when you saw him get his head pinched between the concrete floor and the knee of a 200-pound stock boy who kept slamming a fist into the bridge of the waiter's nose again and again in a flat, hard, packing sound you could hear over all the yelling until the waiter caught enough breath and sprayed blood to say, "Stop." You don't say anything because Fight Club exists only in the hours when a Fight Club starts and when a Fight Club ends. You saw the kid who works in the copy center a month ago. You saw this kid who can't remember the 3-hole punch in order or put colored slip sheets between the copy packets. But this kid was a god for 10 minutes when you saw him kick the air out of an accountant representative twice his size, then land on the man and pound him limp until the kid had to stop. That's the third rule in Fight Club. When someone says stop or goes limp, even if he's just faking it, the fight is over. Every time you see this kid, you can't tell him what a great fight he had. Only 2 guys to a fight, one fight at a time. They fight without shirts or shoes. The fights go on as long as they have to. Those are the other rules of Fight Club. Who guys are in Fight Club is not who guys are in Fight Club is not who they are in the real world. Even if you told the kid in the copy center that he had a good fight, you wouldn't be talking to the same man. Who I am in Fight Club is not someone my boss knows. This idea of masculinity, of brutality, of violence, having to have a sheer dichotomy from the working world, that we have to turn on and turn off that part of us to go to work. Come home, we still have that thing inside of us that people from work would not recognize. Here we have Mike, who is, I'm assuming the pug in x-pug stands for pugilist. I am assuming these are boxing matches, not that this is human cockfighting. I am assuming this is something at least semi-sanctioned versus Fight Club and Chuck Palahniuk, where these are guys just going at it. They have their own rules, which are, number one, don't talk about Fight Club. The person we are in Fight Club is not the person you will find at our job. Here we have the narrator of our poem seeing Mike at work. He works on cars. And it's not just that he doesn't feel like he can talk to Mike about his fights. It's that he doesn't feel like he can talk to Mike at all. You will notice these things that he says. Do you think it's going to rain? You think the sun's gonna come out? That's not real talk. Those are things you say to politely suggest, I don't want to talk to you. I want as little interaction with you as humanly possible so that we may both stay who we are. Here we have Mike going to work, still wearing the fights on his face, just like we have. Maybe at lunch the waiter comes to your table and the waiter has two black eyes of a giant panda from the Fight Club last week when you saw him get his head pinched between the concrete floor and the knee of a 200-pound stock boy who kept slamming a fist into the bridge of the waiter's nose again and again in a flat, hard packing sound you could hear over all the yelling until the waiter caught enough breath and sprayed enough blood to say, stop. We even have in this poem Mike fighting to failure, which suggests not that victory is the manly thing, not that victory is the necessary part of violence, but that violence is the necessary part of manhood. Violence is the necessary part of violence. It is and ends into itself. We have a poem here which must have predated Fight Club because Charles Bukowski died in 1994. Fight Club was published in 1996. Chuck Palahniuk, I believe, is from the East Coast. Charles Bukowski living on the West Coast. Highly unlikely, I believe, that this poem influenced the book. But maybe it's something that is alive in us, or it yearns to be something which should be there, something which is perhaps a little bit self-destructive all the time, so that ultimate self-destruction never becomes paramount, so that ultimate self-destruction never becomes necessary, so that outward destruction does not have to happen. Maybe there is something alive in all of us that yearns for a little bit of violence, yearns for small tests of what it is we might be capable of. And here we have it. I would assume this poem was published in the 90s, 80s or 90s. Was it only by then that these urges became so great in us because the work world was so tamed down? In the work world, the wrong eyebrows can get you talked to by compliance or HR. A slightly misspoken word could lead to your dismissal. There is no room for aggression, for hostility in the working world where we spend a majority of our waking hours. There are 168 hours in a week. There are 168 hours in the week. You sleep. You are supposed to sleep 56. 168 minus 56. 112 left. Minus 40. 72 left. There are 72 hours of your life, if you were working full time, which are not dedicated to sleep or work. It takes you an hour every day to get to work, get ready for work, and to work. Thus, you have 67 hours of real life. And none of it, probably, none of it is aimed towards that expression of violence. Just a little bit of violence, a little bit of self-destruction, so that this big destruction does not culminate and flow over. There is another quote in this book that is along the same lines as this. It is the beginning of chapter 8. My boss sends me home because of all the dried blood on my pants, and I am overjoyed. The hole punched through my cheek doesn't ever heal. I'm going to work, and my punched out eye sockets are two swollen up black bagels around the little piss holes I have left to see through. Until today, it really pissed me off that I'd become this totally centered Zen master, and nobody had noticed. Still, I'm doing the little fax thing. I write little haiku things and fax them to everyone. When I pass through the hall at work, I get totally zen, right in everyone's hostile little face. Worker bees can leave. Even drones can fly away. The queen is their slave. What is it in us that desires violence? Just a little bit. Not a whole lot. Just a little bit of violence. There's something there, isn't there? Something animalistic to us, something that enjoys the hunt, something that needs the kill, something that must have that violence. I think there must be. Why else, in today's world, as civilized as it is, as clean and compartmentalized as it is, as hermetically sealed as it might be, what other reason would there be for the violence represented in football, for the violence put forth by UFC, for the violence you can find every Friday night fights in the boxing ring? What other use would we have for these things? Why would we hold these athletes in such high regard as a community, were it not for the want of violence? Will that thing ever go away? Is it possible that that thing that needs violence evolves out of us? What would it take? What would we need? How long could it take for that to manifest? That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you enjoy what I do here, hitting the like button tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance, but not design, literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel. Poetry every Mondays, at least. I've got poetry, short stories, novel read alongs, all sorts of stuff. And I hope to have you back for the next one.